In this video, I'm going to talk about the 7 steps website owners need to take to help reduce the risk of ever receiving a CIPA demand letter. My name is Hans. I'm one of the co-founders of Termageddon. Termageddon is an auto-updating website policies and consent solution that helps website owners comply with applicable laws and keep those policies up to date whenever those laws change. We've noticed a significant rise in website owners receiving CIPA demand letters from predatory attorneys. And in this video, my hope is to help website owners all over protect themselves, respect the privacy rights of their website visitors, and move on with their business. Please note everything I share today is not legal advice. It's for informational purposes only, but I do hope this helps. Okay, so we are going to go through the 7 steps website owners need to take to help avoid ever receiving a CIPA demand letter. Because I'm one of the co-founders of Termageddon, and that's where my experience lies, there's a little bit of bias in these instructions where I'm assuming you're using the Termageddon platform, not just for your policies, but for your consent solution. However, I also want to note, though, these instructions are helpful for virtually any website owner that may be at risk of receiving a CIPA demand letter. Okay, so before we go into those steps, I do want to just cover the basics of what is CIPA and what are third-party tracking technologies. And I also want to say I'm coming from a layman's term. I'm trying to share this so that it's as understandable as possible for as many people as possible. Okay, so what is CIPA? CIPA is the California Invasion of Privacy Act. It's a law that was created over 30 years ago to protect Californians from third-party companies eavesdropping on their phone calls. It's actually a pretty cool law from the get-go. Basically, if you're a California resident and you're on a phone call, it's illegal for someone to be secretly listening and tracking you while you have that phone call, unless you provide consent. So, standing back from it all, okay, that's actually a pretty cool law in my opinion. But the way that law was written has allowed a group of opportunistic attorneys to kind of reinterpret that law and have it apply to websites as well. So if you have a website and you have third parties tracking your website visitors and you get traffic from California, you could be exposed to the CIPA demand letters that are being sent out all over right now. So website owners that load third-party tracking technologies without getting consent from their visitors from California could be potentially at risk of receiving one of these CIPA demand letters. Okay, now what is a third-party tracking technology? A lot of website owners will innocently install these free tools onto their website thinking, oh, this is great. I get more website analytics or I get more relevant advertising tracking going on, without really fully grasping what's happening. When you install a third-party tracking script into your website, that means every time someone visits your website, that website visitor's data is being shared with a third party, and oftentimes that third party is now tracking that visitor on your website and using that data often for their own benefit as well. Google Analytics, Facebook Pixel, Google Ads, LinkedIn Insight Tag, Microsoft Clarity, HubSpot form embeds, Google Map embeds, YouTube video embeds. These are all examples where you've taken a third party and embedded it into your website. Maybe you embedded it into the header of your website so that it loads on all pages. Or maybe you embedded it into specific body copy of individual pages. When we're embedding a third-party technology, that's when the alarm bells need to be going off for us website owners thinking, oh, do I need to get consent for this first, especially from visitors from California, before loading it? And right here, I put an example of what a third-party embed code often looks like. It starts with the word script, and it typically involves a source with a third-party URL. This is a Google Analytics script, but the concept here is very versatile. It can apply to many scripts, basically all scripts that you add to a website. If you see the word script and you see a third-party URL, the alarm bell should be going off. Okay, is this a third-party tracking technology that's being installed that I'm loading on my website? Now, the key to complying with the California Invasion of Privacy Act is ensuring these scripts are off by default, in particular for your website visitors from California, until they give an explicit action, meaning once someone visits your website, you provide a consent banner and someone clicks accept, and that is what gives us the right to load this script so that we can track the user with this third-party technology. Getting consent to third-party tracking technologies is the key to complying with CIPA. Okay, so that is CIPA, and that is what third-party tracking scripts are. Let's now head into the actual steps needed to properly help avoid ever receiving a CIPA demand letter. Step one, and this is a step I don't see many website owners take, but this is such a key first step. Identify all the third-party technologies loading on your website. Given that I've run Termageddon for 10 years, I can't tell you how many times I've had website owners say, I have no idea what I'm loading on my website. Unfortunately, that's not going to hold up in court. We as website owners need to accept that the industry is regulated and that we need to get above it and be professional and represent ourselves as best we can to our website visitors and the opportunistic attorneys that might be scanning your website. So earlier I shared Google Analytics, Facebook Pixel, Google Ads, LinkedIn Insight Tech, HubSpot Forms, third-party scripts that load onto your website. Put a little list together. It can be in like a little doc or an Excel sheet, something that gives you one view where you can see all third-party technologies. Now, in this video, I'm going to be going through a test website live and going through everything. Now, this is my test website. It's a WordPress website, but this example should work for any web builder platform that you use. I'm going to head into the back end of my website. And I know that I load all my third-party technologies through my little code snippets plugin. So when I go to all snippets, I see all the third-party technologies loading on my website. They're all right here. I like things clean, so I put them all in one location because that makes my life easier. And I would recommend you consider doing the same if possible. Now, your website might be different. Maybe you have code snippets and then you've also added third-party scripts elsewhere in the header of your website via other means. Maybe your theme options area, or maybe another plugin. Or maybe you embedded third-party scripts on particular pages. The reality is you need to do an audit of your website and identify third-party scripts. If you don't know what's loading on your website, you're not in a good place. So get a list put together of all third-party technologies. That is an essential step one process. I also want to note, in addition to reviewing the back end of your website, there are nice little tools like Wapalizer that tell you how a website is built. So I'm going to go here to the home page, and using Chrome, there is this little plugin called Wapalizer, and it tells you what's loading on the website. And sure enough, Google Analytics, Facebook Pixel, LinkedIn Tag, Microsoft Clarity, we just saw those all in the back end of my website as well. Now, Wapalizer is a third-party tool, so don't rely on that solely, but it can start to help you, remind you, oh yeah, I do have Facebook Pixel from 4 years ago that I totally forgot about. So it's a good checker, but really review the back end of your website and locate where your third-party scripts are. Step two is all about removing any unnecessary tracking scripts you're loading on your website. I can't tell you how many times website visitors have come, or website owners have come to me saying, oh, I just got a demand letter for CIPA noncompliance. It's for Facebook Pixel. I totally forgot that we even had that on our website. Unfortunately, that's not going to really help much in your situation. And I share that story to say that don't get yourself caught up in that situation. As a former agency owner, prior to running Termageddon, I ran an agency. I'm guilty as charged too. I would, my client would ask me to run Facebook Pixel for them for some ad campaigns, and then a month later they turn off their ads, but I never took the time to remove that Facebook Pixel. That's something that we have to address now. When we're not utilizing third-party technologies, we need to remove it from the website because third-party technologies, tracking technologies, are now considered high risk because of these CIPA demand letters. So have the list of services you use and remove the ones that you don't actually need. And for me, I'll show you an example here. Go to snippets, and I could remove, let's say, oh, I don't actually ever use Microsoft Clarity. I've never actually logged into Clarity and looked at anything. Let's just delete it. Let's get rid of it. There's no reason to have it. All right, so we removed one, but for this example, I'm going to say, oh, I do check my Google Analytics. I do run LinkedIn ads, and I do still have my Facebook Pixel that I really need. So we'll keep those in for this example, but remove the scripts you don't need. That is unnecessary risk. Step 3 is all about adding a consent solution for all other scripts that remain on your website. So let's now add a consent solution to the website. For this example, I am using Termageddon, and because it's a WordPress website, I'm going to activate the Termageddon plugin. And under Tools, Termageddon plus User-Centrics, I'm going to add in my Termageddon ID. Now, if you are using Termageddon, you just log into Termageddon, you go to your license, and you go to embed codes, and you copy your ID for the plugin and paste it right here. Now, when I visit the website in a fresh incognito window, I should see my website load. Sorry, I should see my website load and the consent tool load. Good, it's loading. Also, I just realized I want to take a step back and go to the previous step. Now, Termageddon has a blog post discussing how there are privacy-friendly alternatives to very common third-party tracking scripts. In fact, let me find it for you here. I'll make sure this is hyperlinked in our blog post. But here is a list of very common third-party technologies that you can replace with privacy-friendly alternatives. So when you implement privacy-friendly alternatives that are not third-party tracking technologies, you removed the need to get consent for those features. And that can be a really great upgrade you can consider making. Okay, back to step 3. We have added the consent tool to our website, and we tested in a fresh incognito window to ensure it's currently displaying. Now, if you have yet to set up a Termageddon account, you got to go to termageddon.com, register, and go through the whole process of getting those policies and consent tool generated. Termageddon will help you identify what laws apply, make the disclosures required under those laws, and help produce the right consent banner for your website, because sometimes consent banners are different based on what laws apply. Okay, step 4. We are now going to make sure our third-party technologies are off by default. And a very quick way to do this is visit your website, because in the previous step, we had the consent tool displaying. So let's visit the website in a fresh incognito window, and let's take a look at the marketing and essential services that we have. So I'm going to click more information, and I'm going to look, and all these third-party technologies are turned off by default. Great. Third-party scripts need to be off by default. You can't, although settings are there where you can enable it by default, for CIPA, you need these off by default. So have all third-party non-essential scripts off by default. Essential scripts are needed to comply with laws, or the website literally won't work without it. So as you see, our consent tool, User-Centrics, is marked as essential because we need to display that for compliance purposes. So for your services, though, they need to all be off by default. And to make that change, you go into your license, you click Edit for the Cookie Policy and Consent tool, and then you scroll to the very bottom where all the services are listed, and you can edit these individual services. And under the General tab, make sure the category is the appropriate category. So like Google Analytics, for example, is not an essential category, so don't mark it as essential. And for the set services to accepted by default, make sure this is unselected. That helps ensure these third-party scripts are off by default. Okay, so the next step is ensuring that your consent solution is displaying, at the very least, to California website visitors. Now, there are many other privacy laws that require consent. For example, CIPA from Canada, Quebec Law 25 from Quebec, Canada, the EU's GDPR, the UK's UK Data Protection Act, and the list goes on and on. So I'm speaking to you today about the California Invasion of Privacy Act, CIPA. So I'm speaking to specifically making sure it displays to California, but there may be other laws that require you to display your consent tool elsewhere. I share this all to say that I know that consent banners are an annoying user experience for a lot of website visitors. I understand that there's a lot of people that feel that way. I felt that way for a very long time too. Now, Termageddon offers features like geolocation, not just for WordPress, but for other website platforms as well, where you can enable this feature and select which areas to display the consent tool to. If you utilize this particular feature, it will be important that you test in the areas where you want the consent tool displaying. And the best way to test that is to use a VPN. I use Proton VPN. I'm a major fan of it because I can drill down and connect right in California, for example. So now I'm VPN'd into California so I can test. So I'm going to open in a fresh incognito window, visit the website, and the consent tool displays. Good. That helps confirm step 5. But I also want to note, if you don't have geolocation enabled and you're simply displaying the consent tool to everyone, well, then it's displaying to people in California as well. But we do want to note it is vital to display the consent tool to visitors in California to ensure that they are opted out by default from third-party tracking technologies and they're given the option to opt in via clicking accept. I also want to note, in particular with WordPress websites, we see a lot of website owners installing performance or optimization plugins. Some common names are Perf Matters, WP Rocket, SG Optimizer, NitroPack, and even WordPress hosting platforms like WP Engine is a good example, where certain settings can alter the header code of your website, and that can interfere with your consent solution. Long story short, we do have support articles on how to prevent that from happening. So I will just show this real quick for anyone that this could help. But this article right here, you can find it at termageddon.freshdesk.com, tells you what to exclude from these performance plugins to ensure the consent tool properly displays. Okay, so a lot of website owners will install consent banners and never actually test. They see a display and they're like, oh, it's working perfect. But more testing needs to be done to make sure your specific site is working well with the consent tool that you've installed. Now, the good news is testing is actually pretty darn simple. Using Chrome, fresh incognito window, I see the consent tool displaying, and I'm going to right-click and inspect and go to Application Cookies. Okay, so what do I see here? I see GA cookies loading, which is Google Analytics. And if you're never sure about a particular cookie, I always just copy the cookie and throw it into like a chat GPT or something like that and say, what cookie is this? And that tends to be fairly accurate. Double check to make sure, but that tends to help you give you a big clue as to what cookie is loading on your browser. All right, and then when I click accept all, Facebook Pixel loads. And that looks to be it. Okay, so Facebook Pixel appears to be responding already to the consent banner, but Google Analytics in this example is not. That brings me into the final step, which is how to fix any issues you identify, which I'll talk about shortly here. But I just want to remind everyone, the steps for initial testing that I just shared, this is initial testing where you right-click and inspect, go to Application Cookies. You can also go to the Network tab and search for things like Google. And as you see, there's little green marks saying that, yep, this data did get shared with Google. So these two tabs in particular are really big indicators for the third-party trackers you have loading on your website and how to test. But for the Termageddon customers, we do provide a step-by-step video guide and troubleshooting guide all in one, showing you how to test further and how to remediate any issues. But yeah, testing is this simple. And I think this is why opportunistic attorneys are so easily able to target website owners, because they too can just right-click and inspect and see if you're tracking them. All right, so the final step is to fix any issues that we found while testing. And as we tested in this example, we had Google Analytics cookies. I'm going to open fresh incognito window. It's essential. You always test your consent tool in a fresh incognito window. I'm going to right-click and inspect, and I'm going to go to Application Cookies. And we have the GA cookies loading, even though I haven't provided consent. So there is an issue we need to fix, which we'll do in this video. And then when I click More Information, and I accept Facebook Pixel, Save Settings, Facebook Pixel does look to be working properly with the consent tool installed right out the gate. But we need to fix the one for Google Analytics. Now, for Termageddon specifically, again, you're going to need to look at the documentation you use for your consent solution specifically. But for Termageddon, and this article will be referenced as well, but we offer several ways to fix this type of issue. For one, we can select manual script control option. And for that, all you have to do is copy this, go to the script that has an issue. So mine was Google Analytics. And right after the word script in space, paste in that ID or that code. And then this Google Analytics contains two scripts. See how it's 1 and then 2. So I have to do it again right here. And then what you do is you place XXX with the name of the service. Well, what's the name of the service? For me, it's specifically Google Analytics. So I'm going to replace XXX with Google Analytics, exactly spelled the way this is spelled. And that is what connects the consent tool to your script. So I'm going to put it here as well. Let's save. And let's test out the site. Fresh incognito window. And the consent tool displays. That helps ensure I'm seeing a fresh incognito window. Application cookies. I don't see any cookies now. And when I click more information, enable Google Analytics, click Save Changes, there go the Google Analytics cookies. So Google Analytics cookies now have not loaded until I provided consent. And that is a key feature that I just shared with you. What we just set up was the manual control of the Google Analytics script. We inserted the controller of that script, turning it off by default, by default, so that when a user consents, only then it turns on. Now, I'm going to remove that from this example script just to get back to the original Google Analytics script, because I want to share an additional way that we at Termageddon provide our customers to be able to manually control scripts as well. You can actually take your third-party script, take it out of wherever currently is listed. So I'm going to turn this off now for Google Analytics. And in our Termageddon plugin, you can add the script right here and then connect it with the exact name of the service you've listed. So for this example, I put it in as Google Analytics. Save changes, and let's visit the site in a fresh incognito window. The consent tool displays. That helps ensure that I'm testing in a fresh incognito window. There's no cookies, and when I click Accept All, there go the Google Analytics cookies. And if I refresh the page, there go, should happen. Sometimes LinkedIn is weird. Oh yeah, there go all the LinkedIn cookies too. Now, if you're a fan of step 1, which is having one central area for all your third-party technologies, let's take this a step further. I'm just going to take all my snippets from wherever I pasted it anywhere else in my website, and I'm going to add it just right into the Termageddon manager. I love this feature because it's just, I don't know, it feels good just knowing, okay, I know it's being controlled because I have it through the controller, the manual controller. So I'll save that. And then I'm going to go to my other final snippet, which is Facebook Pixel. I'm going to copy this whole thing, bring it over into Termageddon. Facebook Pixel. Why do I call it Facebook Pixel? Because that's the name of the service I have right here. So this matches this, letting our tool know that when a user consents to Facebook Pixel, matching it to this, that means to turn on this script. Hopefully that makes sense. It took me so long to understand for many years, so hopefully this is quick and easy to understand for you. All right, I'm going to save changes, and let's do one final test for this video. We'll visit the site, fresh incognito window. You've heard me say it many times in this recording, but I can't stress that enough. Always test in a fresh incognito window. Okay, I don't see any cookies. Go to more information. Let's activate Facebook Pixel. There goes Facebook Pixel. Let's activate Google Analytics. There goes Google Analytics. And let's activate LinkedIn Insight tag. And this one always takes like a weird second or two to load in, but there we go. Cool. There goes the LinkedIn Insight tag. Excellent. Now, I just realized, oh, I have a service I don't actually use on my website. So it's probably best to clean this up a little bit. So I'm going to remove that from my Termageddon license. So I head back into the cookie policy and consent tool questionnaire. You know what? I'm going to test this one more time too, because I did have Facebook Pixel enabled here. So I want to prove that it's working properly. But let's scroll down and let's remove Microsoft Clarity because we're just simply not using it. Okay, so we just removed a service that we're not using, so we just wanted to clean up our consent tool, but also I realized that Facebook Pixel was still loading via code snippets. So just to make sure it's 100% working correctly, let's visit the site again, fresh incognito window, the consent tool displays. When I click more information, I don't see Microsoft Clarity anymore. Great. Right-click inspect, go to application cookies. Let's enable Facebook Pixel and let's click save changes. There goes Facebook Pixel. So this helps confirm it's all working. Okay, so that is how to fix any issues. Now, this was specific to Termageddon, but your consent solution, hopefully, is providing extensive documentation how to troubleshoot your specific issues. Now, the article does cover some frequently asked questions, like I'm loading Google Tag Manager, this to load in multiple tags. And if you always wondered, am I loading Google Tag Manager? You can typically inspect your website and under Elements, search for GTM or search for Google. Well, yeah, GTM is a good indicator, or equals GTM, and that can quickly help you determine if you're using Google Tag Manager. But again, ultimately, you need to determine it no matter what. But if you are loading tags through Google Tag Manager, Google has something called Google Consent Mode. The consent tool we provide is a Google certified CMP, so you can follow our step-by-step guide to properly set up compatibility with that. If you are using third-party plugins, modules, or widgets to install third-party tracking technologies, this may or may not create difficulty with consent banners. My strong recommendation is, whenever possible, just copy and paste the regular embed code into the header of your website and then set up manual control for it, because plugins, modules, and widgets sometimes are not supportive of consent tools. They are built to not support consent tools, and that can cause headaches. So whenever possible, deactivate those and install scripts regularly into the header of your website. And then similar to that, if you have a web building platform that has like an integrations tab where you just copy and paste your Google Analytics ID, copy and paste your Clarity ID, and all you're doing is installing a little ID, chances are that too may have difficulty with consent solutions. So what's my recommendation? Same as the one above. Remove that stuff from that integrations tab and just install the regular embed codes into the header of the website, and then test and set up manual control if needed. Okay, so this was extensive, but hopefully it was very helpful. We talked about summarizing all the third-party technologies you're loading on your website, get a single list, then remove the stuff you don't need. These third-party tracking scripts are high risk. Remove the stuff you don't need because they're high risk now. And there's a lot of privacy-friendly alternatives to very popular third-party tracking technologies that you can also consider switching over to. Then you need to get that consent tool displaying on your website for all other third-party technologies you're loading on your website. Make sure your third-party technologies are off by default. That is an essential step to complying with CIPA and many other privacy laws. Display your consent solution at the very least to California visitors, or maybe just display it to everyone. That may be the best move. And then test your consent solution, and then fix any issues when you find when testing. That will do it. That will help protect your business and your website. So I do hope this helps. And I know that we aren't all in love with cookie consent banners. I totally understand that. We aren't in love with consent solutions. They aren't the prettiest thing added to a website, but what they do really well is respect the rights of your website visitors while helping prevent potential legal issues. So add one to your website, make sure it's properly installed. You're going to be protecting yourself, and you're going to help respect the privacy rights of your website visitors. It really is a win-win at the end of the day. I hope this helps. And yeah, if you are interested in Termageddon, feel free to give us a try. Thanks so much.